Well, good evening, my friends. Kevin the Comic Doctor coming to you with another edition of One on One, and today I'm here to talk to you a bit about C.P.R. That's comic book cracking, pressing, and regrading of comic books that have already been graded. Guys, I'm Kevin the Comic Doctor. I'm a comic book presser. I'm also an authorized CGC dealer located way up in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada. And like I said, today we're going to talk about taking your comic books out of their slabs and hoping for a higher grade. Now, there are some things you can do as a collector, if you're into this sort of thing, to kind of increase your chances of finding books that are good candidates for CPR. A lot of, I get calls weekly, and texts with images saying, "What do you think, Kev? Is this a good contender? Is this a good book? Should we crack it and press it and regrade it?" Well, I can tell you with pictures, I can only say so much. Even with the grader notes, they're so damn vague. What are they saying, right? I got to have the book in my hand to see if there's a chance of a potential increase in grade. But there are some things you can do when looking for contenders that might increase your chances of seeing your grade go up. Okay, and the first thing you want to look for are books in older CGC labels. Like this is my book. In fact, the books I'm going to show you today are all mine. Books that I'm going to do some CPR on. And this is a 9.2 ASM 122. And as you'll notice, that label looks kind of strange. Well, that's one of CGC's original universal labels, okay? And if you've been in the business or in the hobby for as long as I have, you know that many people think that early CGC books underwent a much more stringent grading process. That meaning that the graders were far stricter back then. Some people think that if I were to crack this out the way it is and send it in, I should see at least a 1-point grade bump without doing anything to the book. So holy cow, if I were to press and clean it, my chances are even that much better, right? So that's the one thing. Back at this time, pressing and cleaning was not something everyone was doing to their books, right? And in fact, when I started, I've said this before, when I started doing this sort of work, people would get mad at me for offering this service. For real. Hate mail. I'm not joking. You shouldn't do this. It's not right. But as the hobby progressed and grew and pressing and cleaning became a much more standardized practice, people started doing it. But back then, like I said, people weren't doing it. So if you have a book that's in one of these old labels, and the modern one was red, by the way, or kind of like a maroon color, there's a good chance the book hadn't been worked on. And they probably graded it a lot harder than they do today. So your chances are double fold. There's a good chance you're going to see a grade bump. Now, that being said, I have taken books out of here and they've gone down. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, right? This is not a guarantee at all. Understand, when you're doing this, there's no guarantees. I don't care who your presser is. I don't care what. There's no guarantees at all. Just keep that in mind. I want you to please keep that in mind, all right? But this might help your chances, okay? Now, CGC had another label. And this one here is their middle label, I like to call it, the label that was in place when I started sending books to CGC. And the same thing applies with this. You may find books from this generation of label that also have not been cleaned and pressed. And if you're not sure, again, you can look at the back of the book, and if there's any grime or black or gray grime on the whites of the book, or on the front title or any of the white areas, it's a good chance the book has not been dry cleaned. If the book has not been dry cleaned, probably hasn't been pressed either, okay? So that's a good sign if you have a kind of a dirty book in an old label. Again, saying, hey, I have not been cleaned and pressed, I'm a good contender, okay? So there you go. Now, what do you do if you've got because I see a lot of guys coming in with these modern labels, these more recent labels, and I still get grade bumps with these. What's up with that? Well, again, you can assume, and again, not always, but you can assume that I would say probably 90% of the books that are getting sent into CGC are getting pressed and cleaned. Now, look, I had a video the other day where I talked about what you should pay for a press, right? And I talked about all sorts of different things. But understand something. Not every presser is the same, okay? Every presser has different techniques, methodologies, different experience. And so you got to keep that in mind. I can honestly say that I've taken books that I've been told were pressed and cleaned. I've done videos on them before, and I've bumped those babies right up, and I fixed problems that other pressers have caused. Again, I'm not saying all pressers are bad. There's lots of fantastic pressers out there. I know there are. I know many of them. But there are some that aren't quite so hot. Just like there are, fantastic mechanics and not so fantastic mechanics, or amazing contractors and not so amazing contractors. Same thing applies in the pressing world, in our hobby, right? So not every press is done the same. So even if your book has been pressed, there may be a chance it could get a bump. In fact, I believe a client brought in this is mine, but another client brought in an ASM 300 to my shop that was pressed by someone else, and I'm cracking it. I could see so many problems through the slab. I'm sure I can get a grade bump on it. So, and again, it's in a more current label. But if you are facing a book like this and it's a good price and you're like, okay, it's probably been pressed and cleaned, what else can I look for? Well, there are a few things you should do. And you should do this with even raw books as well. But the first thing you should do is check out the four corners of the book. And I'm talking 1, 2, 3, 4. Check out all four corners. Make sure they're nice and sharp as can be, especially in a modern book like this. You want to make sure there's no folds or no dog ears. Even tiny little 1 millimeter dog ears will cause a 9.8 to go down to a 9.6 or a 9.4. So you got to look for those things. Then you want to, after you've done the four corners, and by the way, flip it over and check the back as well. All four corners. So it's really actually 8 corners. Do all the corners, front and back, and make sure they're nice and sharp. And then what you want to do is check out the spine, front and back. Like this is a great example. ASM 300s, sometimes I've seen they look fantastic from the front. They're, oh my God, it's a 9.8 all day long. I turned around. I'm like, nope. There goes that idea. It's not a 9.8, not even close to a 9.8. So make sure that, check the spine tick situation out. What's that all about? Is there color loss? Is there like color breaking spine ticks, or are they just little, micro bends? And will they come out or will they not come out? Because sometimes not all spine ticks will come out. Most pressures we can make them look better. Sometimes we can get rid of them. If there's color loss or color breaking ticks, those babies, we can smooth them out. But they're there and they're never going to go away. So you got to count those and make sure there's not 15 of those babies on there. Because if there are, then that's going to affect your grade, obviously. So once you've established, and remember, you check the back and front of the spine. You've checked all corners, front and back, and you're happy with it. Or you see something that can be fixed, even better. The next thing is to do, and this is the hardest part with these books, is you want to check the body, the face of the book, and the back of the book. You want to, kind of angle the book in different lighting angles, because you're going to look through the acrylic and you're going to look through the inner well. So you got a chunk of acrylic and a nice, probably like 16 mil Mylar that you have to look through, and that's not easy. But if you can find finger dents, and I've talked about this before, finger dents, little, non-color breaking dents in the body of the face of the book, the back of the book, those are your friend. The more of those you find, the better, because those 100% go away. If your presser knows what he's doing, or she's doing, it could be a female presser, right? If he or she knows what they're doing, those finger dents will gone. And that's a good thing. So the more finger dents and bends I see, I love it. I just did for Spiro, I did a Batman Adventures 12, and I believe it did go up. I think it was an 8 or an 8.5, and I think it went up to a 9 or a 9.2. The book was not, I knew it was going to be a 9.8, but I could see tons of finger dents on it. And when I took it out, I saw even more. And I was happy because I knew those were all going to go away. And so once those all went away, his grade went up, right? So look for those finger dents and bends. Now, let's talk about PGX slabs and let's talk about CBCS really quickly. Because sometimes guys, they don't like those slabs. They don't want them graded from those companies. You know as well as I do, CGC garners the most when you go to sell these books. So people have a PGX book they want to transfer into CGC or CBCS. What do? Let's talk about PGX. Let's talk about PGX for a second. PGX has always been known to be, and this is industry-wide. People talk, and we all know this. There's no secrets here, right? We all know this. PGX, oftentimes people feel, collectors feel that they've been a little light on their grading. They're a little easy with the grading. Easier than CGC, easier than CBCS. So if you've got like a 9.0 PGX, it could be in the eyes of CGC, it could be a 7 or a 6 even. I've seen it drop that much. So when you're going to buy a PGX book, just make sure you take that into consideration, and you should not be paying, CGC prices for a PGX book. But there might be a great deal to be had. Again, with PGX, be careful. Again, I'm not saying this happens more often than not, but it has happened, and I've seen it happen personally. PGX sometimes misses restoration. They sometimes missing parts of the book, clippings, things like that. They're not as thorough as CGC for catching all these things. So sometimes you buy a book, you think you've got something really amazing, you crack it, and then we find color touch, or we find that a coupon has been clipped out. So just keep that in mind with PGX. It's a bit of a don't pay too much, because you never know, right? And then as for CBCS, they're a little safer, because CBCS, let's be honest, their grading standards are a little more in line with CGC. Heck, the dude who started CBCS started CGC. Very similar practices, and I think their grading is a little bit more on par. Look, sometimes I think CGC is a little stricter than usual, and I think it just kind of goes back and forth, right? So, again, with CBCS, look for the exact same things I talked about. Look for those sharp corners, all 8. You want to check the spine back and forth, and look for those dents. So there's definitely room for improvement if you find those, okay? Now, again, guys, I have to stress again, anytime you take a book out of a previously graded book out of its slab, once you crack that sucker open, that grade is now null and void, and you're starting from scratch. There is a degree of gambling involved here, and if you can't stomach that, don't do it. If like, I'm going to crack this, okay, I'm going to do it, and I know it could come back a 9.2, and I'm okay with that. If this coming back a 9.2 will drive me crazy, if I'll lose sleep over it and I'll go mad because of it, I'll leave it alone. And I recommend you do the exact same thing. Don't start this game unless you can finish it, because there's never any guarantees at all. And I think I said this, I'm not sure if I said the stats earlier. I would have to say loosely. I haven't done the stats on this, officially, but I'm going to say, I think that I would say usually around 95% of the books come back improved with a higher grade. Probably about 3 or 4% come back the same, and about 1 or 2%, again, very loose, come back lower. If you go to my Instagram page at Comic Doc, I have a whole bunch of samples, some really huge grade bumps, some small ones, and I don't post the boring ones. I don't post the ones that come back the same, and I don't post the ones that go down. Who would? But I'm telling you straight up, it does happen. So don't think it does. Anybody who's saying there's no way it's going to go down, they don't know that. They don't know that. So be very careful and cautious. Your presser should, if you're using a different presser, they should look at the book in hand and be able to give you a pretty good, indication as to whether or not it's a good idea to move forward or not. I always do that with my clients. I say, listen, I'm going to look the book over very carefully. If I feel that it's a bad idea, I will tell you. I think of Troy from the Maritimes, who sent me some old Dell books and Mickey Mouse books. Hi, Troy, if you're watching. Troy P. And I think I said to him initially, none of these books, we should crack any of these books. I didn't want to. And I was about to send them all back to him, and I looked at them again, and the Mickey Mouse book, and I think the pictures are actually on my Instagram page. I looked at it again for like the 4th time. I said, maybe this one might actually bump. So I contacted Troy. I said, listen, Troy, I changed my mind on this one. Let's try it. So I did it, and it came back. It went up, which is fantastic. And I think that's why my average and my numbers are so high, is because I'm very, very picky about which ones I agree to do. Now, today, I had some people come in from, new clients come in from Quebec on their way back to home. They dropped in. And, of course, they dropped off. One of the books dropped off was one of these, actually. I have the exact same book. Was a 9.6 copy, one of my favorite books right here, of, Amazing Spider-Man 194. And, boy, oh, boy. I was like, do we do this? I mean, I said, I prefer if CCS did it or CGC did it. I don't want to do it because it's a 9.6, right? But he really wanted me to do it. Me. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll break down. I'll do it. But I said, honestly, I don't want to. And I told him I recommend we send it to CGC. But he wanted me to do it. So I'm going to crack it. I'm going to do it. The book is gorgeous. But you never know. It's still a gamble, I'm doing mine. I'm going to do mine. But it's mine. It's my book. And I'm aware. This could go to a 9.4. I think it's going to go to a 9.8, but it could go to a 9.4. So again, anybody telling you it's a sure thing, it's going to happen, baloney. There's always that level of risk involved. All right, guys, so keep that in mind. Listen, have you tried the C.P.R? Have you cracked, pressed, and regraded any comic books? Let me know. Let us all know in the comment section below. I'd like to hear about your successes. I'd love to hear about your failures or your stalemates, because I've had a lot of stalemates, right? I've talked about many of these already here on the channel, but let me know what your experiences are, guys. Again, I do live unboxings here on my. If you're new here, I do live unboxings here on my channel. So almost sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, but usually at least once a week, I come on here and do live CGC unboxings. If you love to check out what's coming back from CGC, to check out what's hot, what's not, this is the place for you to do that. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share it too if you don't mind. And you know what? I would hit that notification bell too, because oftentimes I'm pretty impromptu. I go on there with very little notice. This here is a pre-recorded video, but most of the time I go live. I chat with my clients and hopefully with you if you're not a subscriber yet in the future. So please consider subscribing. Until next time, my friends, you take care. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll talk again very soon here on the Comic Doctor YouTube channel. Bye for now.